What's happening, guys? So today I'm going to talk a little bit about programming and periodization. This is actually stemming from a question that I got in my Q&A. If you watched it, I told you that there was going to be a couple of questions that I got that I wanted to do my own videos on because they'd be very in-detailed responses and would take a long time to do. So this is one of those questions. So I'm going to read the question and then I'm going to talk a little bit about it, kind of give you some insight and talk about how you can kind of program, kind of depending on what you've been doing and what your goals are. Alright, I'm going to read the question here. The question was, I would like to know what kind of program periodization you are currently using and what training routine you think would be most productive in relation to increasing strength if someone can only train 4 days per week and has no more than 2 hours per session to train. I would also love to know how you train your weak points, aka bench press, differently than the other two lists. Because this person sucks at benching. I know the feeling. As for the first question, what kind of programming periodization am I using right now? I want to preface this by saying, whatever I'm doing, don't just do that, okay? Because it's specifically for me and kind of my history and all these different things that go into programming. So I will tell you what I'm doing, but realize that the chances of this being something that you should do too is probably unlikely, especially if you're kind of new to training. So I am currently squatting and benching 3 days per week, and I am deadlifting twice per week. So basically, Mondays and Fridays I do all 3 movements, and on Wednesday I do just squat and bench press, and then I have hypertrophy days on Tuesday, Thursday, or either Tuesday, Saturday, depending on how the week goes. So the type of programming that I like to use is called daily undulating periodization, also known as DUP, and it kind of undulates the reps or varies the reps throughout either a week or just kind of a given microcycle, depending on kind of what you've been doing and how fast you're progressing. That can be different for everybody. And the reason I like this is because you can use several different rep ranges. Now there's many different ways you can do this. There's no one way to do DUP. There's like an infinite amounts of ways to do this, and I just like to do it instead of doing it in kind of like linear blocks, because if you do it that way, kind of say you do like mostly heavy lifting for one block, and then you go into kind of moderate weights, and then you go into light weights. Each block, as you progress, you're going to kind of lose some of the adaptation from the original block as you move along. So with DUP, you use kind of all of them in one, depending on how you go about things. Now, I don't personally like kind of doing like a 15, 10, 5 or 12, 6, 2. Personally, I like to kind of keep it a little bit closer together, and it really just kind of depends upon where I am in relation to having a meet and just kind of how far into the off season I am and everything else. So if I'm not going to have a meet for a long time, I'm probably going to get into a volume block. I'm going to do something a little bit higher. It could be 10-8-6, it could be 12-10-8. It could be 12-8-5, it could be whatever you want it to be. And then as I get closer to a meet, it's going to slowly kind of have the rep ranges drop down, because higher weights is obviously better for gaining strength, which is obviously the kind of the goal of going into a meet. So it's all about specificity at that point. So like right now, most of my programming is with 6, 4s, and 2s, but that's because I was planning on doing a meet in December, which is now not happening. But I'm just going to finish off this block before I go into something else anyways, instead of kind of stopping a block in the middle of a process. So what does all that mean for you? Well, kind of nothing actually, because I don't know what you're doing now. I don't know what you've been doing in the past, and I can't specifically tell you, without knowing a lot more information about you, what you should kind of be doing and what would be kind of a more optimal way to do it. Now there's like I said, there's many ways to do this, so it's not like there's one way, but I can kind of lead you in a better direction if I had a better understanding. Now I know you want to work out 4 days per week, 2 hours per day, but I don't know what you're doing. I don't know, are you squatting, benching, and deadlifting 1 time per week? Are you doing all of them 2 times per week? Are you doing them 3 times per week? I don't know. So I can't really kind of say what would be the most optimal way to do it, but what I can tell you is not progress too fast. So if you've been doing everything 1 time per week right now, definitely I wouldn't say start squatting, benching, and deadlifting 3 times per week. It'd be too much. You would make really good progress in that time if you stayed healthy, but most likely you're going to get injured if you do that. Plus, what you're doing is, even though you're going to make a lot of progress up front, in the back end as you progress, it's really going to slow down, and it's going to be much harder to progress in the future when you do this. So you want to kind of take volume slowly. And if you don't know what volume is basically sets times reps times weight. And then that number over time should slowly start to get higher and higher and higher. Now that's going to change if you're going to be prepping for a meet or something like that, but again, that just comes down to specificity. Also, what rep schemes you should probably use at any given time really depends a lot on kind of what you're doing and where you're going, and say for instance if you have any meets coming up or not. So if you don't have any meets coming up for a long time, you're going to want to kind of stick with higher reps and get more volume in, and then as you get closer, you're going to kind of start cutting that down a little bit. The volume will come down, but the intensity will go up until you get to a peaking phase, and then you really kind of get down and dirty. But as always, there's just a lot of variables. So let's just say for instance you want to squat and bench twice per week and deadlift once per week. So what you could do is you could do squat one day, bench the next day, deadlift the next day, and then squat and bench the fourth day. Okay, something like that. I mean, you can mix it up, and then you can put in your hypertrophy work at the end of those kind of sessions, or however you want to do it. Personally, when I do my powerlifting work, I take extremely long rest periods, and my sessions take a really long time. But for you, I mean, 2 hours is a long time. I mean, you can get a lot of work done in 2 hours. Now, I have a tendency to go over that just because I mess around a lot. I talk with my friends a lot in the gym, and I just kind of hang out, and I don't rush through my sessions. But if I wanted to, I could get through it in 2 hours, no problem. But I like to have a lot of rest, so I have full strength going to every single set, because that's what's more important to me. Being a powerlifter, all I care about is strength. Now, how are you going to undulate your reps? Well, this kind of depends again on how you're doing everything. But if for instance, like I said, if you were actually only doing it twice per week, each movement twice per week, and your undulation pattern is actually 3 different rep schemes. So if you're doing 8s, 6s, and 4s, we'll say, your first workout of the week would be 8s, your last workout of the week with that same lift would be 6s, and then the first workout of the next week would then be 4s. You see what I'm saying? And then you would go 8, 6, 4, 8, 6, 4, 8, 6, 4, until you're done with that block and you start something different. Now, if you're doing all the lifts 3 times per week, with the exception of deadlifts, I wouldn't recommend doing deadlifts 3 times a week. I tried that for a while. It just leads to burnout. It's just a little bit too much. I don't know what it is about deadlifts, but you can't do it as much as the other lifts. So if you're doing, squat and bench 3 times per week, then you'd go 8, 6, 4 all in 1 week, and you'd 8, 6, 4 all in 1 week, and you'd just continue to do that. If you're only doing it 1 day per week, you could do 8s 1 week, 6s the next week, 4s the next week. But it just all depends on where you're starting and where you're going. Now, as for your last question, how to bring up weak points or weak lifts in comparison to the other ones, the first thing I would do is really make sure you're nailing your technique first, okay? Make sure you're a very efficient lifter with that move, and if you have kind of weak spots with your technique, that's one way you're really going to bring things up fast. I've gained a lot of weight on my different lifts just because I got much more efficient with that particular lift. But the other thing you need to keep in mind is most people, they're going to be good at one lift and not so good at the other lift. It's going to be because of your levers, all right? Like for me, for instance, I have a really long torso, short femurs. This is great for squatting. This is why my squat continues to go up all the time, because even with low bar, I can stay pretty upright, and it makes it really efficient for me. But that also works against me with the deadlift. Now, with all that said, if everything looks pretty good and you're really struggling with a certain lift, chances are you just need more volume with that lift. I mean, everyone has lifts that just don't go as well for them as other lifts do. And so if you're squatting twice per week and you're deadlifting once per week and you're benching twice per week and your bench is really struggling, you might need to go 2 times squat, 1 time deadlift, and then 3 times bench, okay? Because you might need more volume to get it in there. Or even if you're not even going to do an extra session, you can do more sets. So if you're doing 3 sets of everything, maybe you're going to go 4 or 5 sets of bench press. You just need to do things that are going to get you more volume in the end. So, I mean, that's kind of a key driver. Volume plays a huge role in it. But again, I got to stress, don't raise it too high. You don't want to just go balls to the walls, go crazy, and just shoot your volume up 2 or 3 times what you've normally been doing. You want to make sure you do it progressively and slowly so that you can continue to make progress down the road. Alright, I hope that kind of helped. I hope that made sense. I know it's kind of a lot of information, and if you don't kind of know about programming and periodization very well, it might kind of seem foreign and it might be kind of hard to understand. So if you're kind of unclear on anything and you need me to clarify anything, please just leave a comment below and I will definitely respond and try to clear things up. Anybody else who sees this who has questions, let me know. I'd be happy to help. But just remember, if you want me to get specific about your programming, I need a lot of context. I need to know a lot about what you've been doing and what you're trying to accomplish, because just kind of random general questions about what's the best way to do things doesn't really work, because it's very, very personalized depending on the history of your training and what you're currently doing and where you want to go. All right, so thanks for watching as always, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.